live in real time. He wanted to answer questions in front of the world live in real time. The Republicans slapped that down. And the Republicans hid this and again released it on New Year's Eve. You should be asking yourself, if the Republicans have nothing to hide, why did they try to bury this during a holiday? It's very clear they do have a lot to hide here, but I'm just getting started. So now we go to this one. This case, Camille McKenzie says, this case was 100% the one that Trump ran to avoid going to jail for, and the GOP elected him off the lie that the 2020 election was stolen. It never was, and the facts are that Trump is the one who tried to steal it and failed. Smith's witness statements and evidence came directly from Republicans that weren't willing to lie for Trump. Judge Cannon deliberately delayed and dismissed this case to protect Trump. He should have been put on trial instead of voters electing a felon to the White House. By the way, I think this is not only correct, but if there's a Supreme Court seat opening, look for Trump to pick Judge Cannon. Because my suspicion is there's some sort of a quid pro quo between Trump and Judge Cannon because she bent over backwards to protect him in clearly unethical ways. All right, now here we go. Listen to what Jack Smith says here.
One of the strengths of our case and why we felt we had such strong proof is our witnesses were not going to be political enemies of the president. They were going to be political allies. We had numerous witnesses who would say, I voted for President Trump. I campaigned for President Trump. I wanted him to win. The Speaker of the House in Arizona, the Speaker of the House in Michigan. We had an elector in Pennsylvania who is a former congressman who was going to be an elector for President Trump, who said that what they were trying to do was an attempt to overthrow the government and illegal. Our case was built on, frankly, Republicans who put their allegiance to the country before the party. And so the president got information from people he trusted on other issues. He rejected it whenever it didn't fit him staying in office. And there was a pattern in our case where anytime any information came in that would mean he could no longer be president, he would reject it. And any theory, no matter how far-fetched, no matter how not based in law, that would indicate that he could, he latched onto that. And we were confident that we had very strong proof of that pattern. He also, I would just add, very consciously did not try to reach out to the sort of people who have the most expertise on these issues. He reached out to people who he thought could back him up.
Wow, holy cow. Now do you see why they buried this? Now do you see why they buried this? Okay, all right. I got more for you, though. The Intellectualist says, Jack Smith on Trump's behavior on January 6th. And he said the following. Here we go.
But it's pretty significant to subpoena the Speaker of the House's toll records, right?
We followed department policy and we followed all legal requirements in getting those records.
I mean, to get the information you're looking for, nobody disputed the Speaker and the President were having communications on January 6th. So one way you could have gotten that information is you could have asked the Speaker's lawyer to look at his phone records and to give you the information you needed, right?
Well, you say now that nobody's disputing, but my experience in criminal investigations is that people often at trial dispute things that you never thought were going to be in dispute during the investigation. And so when I conduct a criminal investigation, I don't assume there will be no disputes. Having a record that is a hard record about a time, and the timeline of that afternoon was particularly important because that violence started. The president refused to stop it. He endangered the life of his vice president, and he's getting calls, and not calls from Democrats, not calls from people he doesn't know, calls from people he trusts, calls from people he relies on, and still refuses to come to the aid of the people at the Capitol. That's very important evidence for criminal intent in our case.
Wow. All right, more. Jack Smith destroys the myth that Trump's fraud lies are protected speech. So what they were going to do, what the Trump team was going to do, is use the defense of free speech, free speech, free speech. I'm allowed to say what I want. I'm allowed to believe the election was stolen. There's nothing criminal about that in any way, shape, or form. This was going to be their defense. And Jack Smith is going to meticulously break down here how that defense does not stand when what's being alleged is fraud. Listen to this.
As I sit here right now, I can't remember specific conversations. I do remember that we knew that a sort of First Amendment defense would be part of the case. And I think when I mentioned to you earlier about how to frame the case, we want to make clear that this was not about trying to interfere with anyone's First Amendment rights, that this was a fraud. And as you know, under Supreme Court precedent, fraud is not protected by the First Amendment. And so in my mind, it was important to make that clear in the indictment. And that's why when we litigated this issue before the district court, we prevailed.
Which, by the way, if you're going to make a First Amendment case, why can't Bernie Madoff? Why couldn't he have made a First Amendment case? Okay, yeah, I'm a con man. Yeah, I'm a scammer, but I was just using my speech, and then you're the one who gave me your money, which I proceeded to steal. So, like, hey, I have a right to say whatever I want to say. That's free speech. But that's not free speech, because fraud is at the heart of this. That is a crime.
The president's statements that he believed the election was rife with fraud, those certainly are statements that are protected by the First Amendment, correct?
Absolutely not if they are made to target a lawful government function and they're made with knowing falsity. No, they're not. That was my point about fraud not being protected by the First Amendment.
I mean, there's a long list of disputed elections. I mean, the election of 1800, 1960, year 2000, where candidates believe they were wronged by because they lost. And there's a long history of candidates speaking out about they believe there's been fraud, there's been other problems with the integrity of the election process. And I think you would agree that those types of statements are sort of at the core of the First Amendment rights of a presidential candidate, right?
There is no historical analog for what President Trump did in this case. As we said in the indictment, he was free to say that he thought he won the election. He was even free to say falsely that he won the election. But what he was not free to do was violate federal law and use knowingly false statements about election fraud to target a lawful government function.
And here's the point, Jack Smith was able to prove that Trump knew what he was saying was fraudulent, that he knew he was wrong. There's multiple pieces of evidence that validate that fact. Like when he was trying to prod Mike Pence to do the same thing, and Mike Pence said he wouldn't do it, and Trump says, "You're too honest, Mike." In other words, I know I'm full of shit. I know you're telling the truth, but I'm going to go out there and pretend to the world like I think I won the election, right? That's the point, is he could prove that Trump was knowingly making fraudulent arguments and using that to try to keep himself in power. It's criminal. Now on the fake elector scheme, which to me is the biggest smoking gun in terms of proving that there was, a detailed conspiracy and multiple crimes here. Listen to this.
Made clear in our indictment that there are proper ways to dispute an election, and asking for an audit, which President Trump did, and I believe in only 2 of the states that were in question, that's a way you can do that. Filing lawsuits, completely legal and proper way to do that. But in this case, those lawsuits were part of our proof that put President Trump and his co-conspirators on notice. The suits, the results, and the things that court said in finding those suits without merit were one component of evidence that put him on notice that these allegations were false. Also, there were instances where there were pretextual lawsuits. There was one lawsuit, for example, that was filed in New Mexico minutes before the deadline, so they could say there was a dispute in New Mexico so they could proceed forward with the fake electors ballot. There was another lawsuit in Georgia where one of the co-conspirators explicitly said in an email, "We're on notice that the things in this lawsuit aren't accurate, so we shouldn't have the president sign a certification of this lawsuit." And then they played with the language a little and had him sign a certification nonetheless. And so these lawsuits, filing a lawsuit absolutely clearly is something you can do. They were probative evidence of the criminal intent in this case for those limited reasons I just suggested.
Wow. Holy cow. But it gets crazier. Ready? So Rachel Bitecofer points this out. Jack Smith said this in the longer testimony. Again, go watch the whole thing or read the 255-page document. You won't regret it. But this is one of the things he said. Former Republican Congressman Thomas Marino agreed to be a Trump elector, then balked at the fake elector scheme. They had to replace him and others without following the Electoral Count Act's procedures. In a text chain among Trump's operatives, someone ends by saying that, quote, "Whoever put this slate together should be shot because of the resistance and legal worries it was causing. Electors were told their certificates would only be used if Trump won in court, but the conspirators planned to use them anyway." So they're telling these people, don't worry, what you're doing is totally legal. You're not a fake elector slate. You're an alternate elector slate. If the courts rule against us, we're just not going to use you. That's what they were telling to these people. But in reality, what they said internally to each other is, we're going to use this no matter what. Even if the court rules against us, we're just going to use the fake elector slates, demand that they're perceived as real, and then steal the election. Again, fraud. There's no two ways about that. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no other explanation. The fact that you have these people internally in their own group chats going, whoever put this together should be shot. This is wildly illegal. That says everything. They knew exactly what they were doing. All right, more. Here we go. This one's from Blue Georgia. He posted this one.
Did Attorney General Garland or other DOJ officials direct investigative steps within your office of the special counsel?
No.
Did Attorney General Garland or other DOJ officials direct litigation decisions within your office?
No.
Did you experience Attorney General Garland or other DOJ officials interfering with your ability to conduct this investigation?
No.
Did President Biden ever give you any instructions about what you should or should not do related to these investigations?
No.
Did you ever speak to President Biden about these investigations?
No.
So no direction from Garland, no direction from Joe Biden, and compare that to what Trump was caught doing, where he accidentally posted a tweet thinking he was texting Pam Bondi saying, you got to do political persecution and lawfare. You got to go after my enemies. Don't let this person get away. They're committing crimes. So Trump is accidentally publicly showing that he's doing lawfare and political persecution. Here, Jack Smith saying, I didn't hear a word from Merrick Garland. I'm a special counsel, so I didn't hear a word from him, and I didn't hear a word from Joe Biden. So all the claims, it's always projection from the right. All the shit they accuse Democrats of doing is what they do. Trump is doing the thing he's saying is evil and bad and wrong, and Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and Joe Biden did not do that thing, okay? Look at this. Jack Smith is forbidden by the corrupt Judge Cannon for now to discuss the really big crimes Trump committed with the classified documents espionage. This exchange from Smith's House testimony shows he's holding back something huge. Smith already said in an October 23rd court filing that he knew what Trump was doing with the classified documents and would prove it in court. I remember that story. We covered it at the time. Well, the answer is in Smith's final report that's being hidden by Cannon, and it destroys Trump. Obviously, Trump shared or sold classified documents with U.S. adversaries. So again, this is in the back and forth. In this testimony that Jack Smith gave. The question was, based on your indictment, is there information that led you to believe that he, Trump, was aware that at least some of these documents are highly sensitive documents? His response to that, Jack Smith's response to that is, yes. Trump knows these are highly classified, highly sensitive documents. Can you draw any conclusions about his refusal to return those documents in spite of having been given multiple opportunities? Jack Smith says, I don't think I can answer that question because it may involve non-public facts that are part of the final report that is currently under an injunction. So the Trump corrupt lackey judge, Judge Cannon, put this information under an injunction. And Jack Smith wants to answer these questions, but he can't because he doesn't want to run afoul of the bullshit injunction. Okay? Question. Okay, can you draw any conclusions about his motive for refusing to return these classified documents? Jack Smith answers, unless you can point me to a filing, a public filing on that issue, I don't want to run any risk of running afoul of the injunction. And so without a public filing on that issue, I don't think I can answer that. So what Tom Joseph is saying here is correct. Jack Smith, as part of his case here, he was able to make the legal argument that Trump, it's not a whoopsie that Trump had this classified information, this top secret information. It's not a whoopsie it was in a Mar-a-Lago bathroom and ballroom. No, he knew what he was doing, he took it on purpose, and there was a criminal reason for taking it. The implication here is he was probably selling that information. Could be to Israel, could be to Saudi Arabia, could be to Russia, could be to U.S. allies or adversaries. But illegally selling information is the implication. And because of Judge Cannon, he's not allowed to talk further about that. But clearly, he wants to. Okay, guys, understand that according to Jack Smith here, Trump was 100% going to jail. Like, according to what Jack Smith is saying here, that's it. It's over. I don't even think Jack Smith has ever lost a case. Right? And so he was gonna nail his ass to the wall. He caught him dead to rights. I got another one for you. Here we go.
Do you feel like you have a target on your back?
I believe that President Trump wants to seek retribution against me because of my role as special counsel.
Would you be surprised if President Trump directly DOJ to indict you?
No.
So in other words, he's saying, I know the president is probably going to come after me. I know he's going to do political persecution and lawfare and come after me because I'm going after him using the law. And you know what? Bring it on. He's going to come after me. He's going to make me a hero. He's going to make me a martyr. I'm right. I can defend every single thing I'm alleging here. I can defend. This is no wonder they hid this. No wonder they hid this. So here are some of the big quotes for you guys to share. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election and to prevent the lawful transfer of power. So all of the bitching and whining and moaning Trump does, where he goes, the Democrats are stealing the election, Biden is stealing the election, the 2020 election was stolen. He's the one who's doing the stealing. Okay? Quote, President Trump willfully retained highly classified documents and then repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. Quote, we charged President Trump because he was the most culpable person in the effort to criminally overturn the 2020 election, and we had proof beyond a reasonable doubt to support that decision. So in other words, he's the head of the snake. He's the head of the snake, and we can prove it in court. Quote, President Trump and his associates exploited the violence on January 6th to pressure members of Congress to delay certification. I did not choose those members. President Trump did. So even after the violence happened on January 6th, Trump and all of his allies were on the phone telling people, do not certify Joe Biden. Do not certify this election. Quote, if asked whether to prosecute the former president again based on the same facts, I would do so regardless of party. These are some of the amazing quotes from Jack Smith. And finally, I'll end on this. What we're talking about here, guys, is a huge deal. We're talking about conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights to effectively throw out all the votes of the people who voted against you. We knew from the indictment, we learned that Trump acknowledged to one of the co-conspirators, co-conspirator 3 to be exact, that his rigged election claims were, quote, crazy. His words, not mine. Trump knew he was lying. Trump knew what he was saying was, quote, crazy. When he tried to get Mike Pence to overturn the results, and Pence said no, Trump said, quote, you're too honest. Trump worked with co-conspirator 4 to open sham election crime investigations. All of this, guys, all of this was going to be proven by Jack Smith in court. They forced the Justice Department to send letters to the states fraudulently saying they have identified significant concerns that may have impacted the outcome of the election. This is what Trump was trying to do. From the indictment, quote, on January 6th, as violence ensued, the defendant and co-conspirators exploited the disruption by redoubling efforts and trying to convince members of Congress to further delay certification based on false claims. A crime. A crime. Co-conspirator 5 had a memo about the fake electors and called it, quote, the fraudulent elector memo and the, quote, fraudulent elector instructions. Internally, they were saying to each other, are fraudulent electors. So for them to turn around now and go, oh, this isn't fraudulent. This is totally legit. This is totally real. They knew it wasn't real. They knew it wasn't legit. Guys, understand that on December 13th, co-conspirator 1 and 5 had a conversation where they decided that the plan is no longer to do alternate electors, but to do fake electors, regardless of what the courts say. That's the whole ball game right there. That's the whole ball game. And the same day, a senior White House advisor in a meeting with Trump and 2 of the co-conspirators said, I don't know who wants to put their name on this thing because it's, quote, certifying illegal votes. It's certifying illegal votes. So, that's it. Pound the gavel. It's over. It's done. This is just proof beyond any reasonable doubt. Hardcore proof that Trump is a criminal, was engaged in a criminal scheme, and Jack Smith, a neutral and objective and truth-telling prosecutor here, was just going to lay out the case in as dry and factual a way as possible. And according to him, he was absolutely going to win it. So spread this far and wide. This is an incredible story. We cannot let them bury this. And we also cannot let these criminals get away with it in the long run. We just can't do that. Because if we do, then we no longer have a country, and any Republican at any time can try to steal the next election because there were no consequences for when they tried to do it in the past. So it's time for everybody to wake up and realize the demons that we're dealing with here.
Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.
MSW Media.
Hi, everybody. I'm Allison Gill,
And we're bringing you this very special episode of the Unjustified podcast in partnership with the Midas Touch Network. Now, this is our first episode of 2026. And as you know, this past Wednesday, New Year's Eve, the majority on the House Judiciary Committee released the transcript of Jack Smith's recent interview conducted behind closed doors. And they followed that up shortly by releasing the video of that interview. Now, I immediately went to work carefully reading through this transcript multiple times. As you may know, former FBI Deputy Director Andy McCabe and I hosted a podcast about the special counsel's investigations into Trump. It was called Jack. And as part of that podcast, I can guarantee you I have read every single motion, every brief, every word written by Jack Smith, every order from the district court, the appellate court, and the Supreme Court. We read every word of both Volume 1 of Jack Smith's final report into the record as a podcast, as well as his 165-page immunity brief that he filed with Judge Chutkin just before the election. I am very familiar with this case inside and out. And after spending the last 2 days parsing the transcript and watching the video testimony, I decided to compile a series of clips to share, the ones that stood out to me the most. And I wanted to provide a little bit of commentary for you. Now, Andy McCabe is out this week, so I'm going to walk you through these carefully selected and curated clips. So thank you very much for being here. Now, Jack Smith's testimony is noteworthy for several reasons. His command of the facts, his calm demeanor, his recollection is on point, very different than Robert Mueller's public testimony in July of 2019. Jack Smith was so measured and so serious, he was unflappable and unimpeachable with his decades of experience, that it really made it hard for Republicans to feel comfortable spouting any of their ridiculousness that we generally hear from them. Now, Smith commanded respect, though that didn't really stop Jim Jordan or his staff from trying to get gotcha moments, but they failed at every turn. This is a very embarrassing piece of testimony for the Republicans on this committee. So let's start at the beginning with former special counsel Jack Smith's opening statement.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss my work as special counsel. I was taught as a young prosecutor to follow the facts and the law, and to do so without fear or favor, to do the right thing the right way for the right reasons. For nearly 3 decades, I've been a career prosecutor. I've served during both Republican and Democratic administrations, and I've been guided by those principles in every role I've held. I continued to honor those principles when I was appointed to serve as special counsel in November of 2022. The decision to bring charges against President Trump was mine, but the basis for those charges rests entirely with President Trump and his actions, as alleged in the indictments returned by grand juries in 2 different districts. Our investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that President Trump engaged in a criminal scheme to overturn the results of the 2020 election and to prevent the lawful transfer of power. Our investigation also developed powerful evidence that showed that President Trump willfully retained highly classified documents after he left office in January of 2021, storing them at his social club, including in a ballroom and a bathroom. He then repeatedly tried to obstruct justice to conceal his continued retention of those documents. I remain grateful for the counsel, judgment, and advice of my team as I executed my responsibilities. I am both saddened and angered that President Trump has sought revenge against career prosecutors, FBI agents, and support staff simply for doing their jobs and for having worked on those cases. These dedicated public servants are the best of us, and they have been wrongly vilified and improperly dismissed from their jobs. I made my decisions in the investigation without regard to President Trump's political association, activities, beliefs, or candidacy in the 2024 presidential election. We took our actions based on the facts and the law, the very lessons I learned early in my career as a prosecutor. We followed Justice Department policies and observed legal requirements. The timing and speed of our work reflects the strength of the evidence and our confidence that we would have secured convictions at trial. If asked whether to prosecute a former president based on the same facts today, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Republican or a Democrat. Recent narratives about my team's work are false and misleading, including stories about our collection of toll records. Toll records were sought for historical telephone routing information, collected after calls had taken place, identifying the incoming and outgoing call numbers, the time of the calls and their duration. Toll records do not include the content of calls. Those records were lawfully subpoenaed and were relevant to complete a comprehensive investigation. January 6th was an attack on the structure of our democracy in which over 140 heroic law enforcement officers were assaulted. Over 160 individuals later pled guilty to assaulting police that day. Exploiting that violence, President Trump and his associates tried to call members of Congress in furtherance of their criminal scheme, urging them to further delay certification of the 2020 election. I did not choose those members. President Trump did. I hope that my testimony today serves to correct these mischaracterizations about my work, and to that end, I welcome your questions.
Straight to the point. First, we've got powerful evidence, proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump tried to stop the peaceful transfer of power. He did a coup, and he willfully retained classified documents and obstructed justice. He also praised the people that worked on his team, something that we don't see from this particular administration. We heard that Trump did this to himself. Were it not for Trump, we would not be here. We learned that the phone records collected from Republicans in Congress was legal, and Trump was the reason for it. He picked those people. And also, finally, stop mischaracterizing my work, kind of a callback to what Bill Barr did with the Mueller report. So let's talk about what I consider to be the standout moments in this interview. And I want to start with Jack Smith easily and swiftly debunking multiple right-wing conspiracy theories. These are all Republican talking points that they brought up one by one, and he continued to debunk. So early in the hearing, a staffer, I think, for Jim Jordan, tried to corner Jack Smith with the right-wing conspiracy that Merrick Garland was against bringing the charges, that somehow Jack Smith went rogue. I'm sure this is probably one of the bases for their criminal investigation into Jack Smith, which I'm sure will go nowhere. But Jack Smith shuts this down pretty handily. Here's that clip.
In June of 2023, you had a meeting with the Attorney General to present a prosecution memo and basically asking for his blessing to bring the indictments. Is that correct?
We did have a meeting, and I think it was around that time. I didn't think about it as his blessing. I was presenting what I intended to do, and he had the ability to countermand that if he wanted to.
Okay. But certainly you couldn't bring an indictment without his authorization.
He could block me from doing that. That's correct.
Okay. And during that June 2023 meeting with the Attorney General, did you guys discuss both indictments, potential indictments, or just the Florida indictment or just the DC indictment?
If it was, I don't have a specific recollection of dates, and so you can check me on public records, but I believe by late June, the classified documents case had already been indicted.
Okay.
So again, this is my recollection, but that would have been a discussion in late June would have likely been about just the elections case.
Okay.
If it was about an indictment.
Okay. And the Attorney General in the June meeting, it's been reported that he expressed some reservations about the DC case. Is that correct?
I had several meetings with the Attorney General about both cases. And in those meetings, we regularly discussed legal issues, factual issues, things of that nature. Never in those meetings did he tell me I couldn't or shouldn't go forward or should go forward. It was more talking through with another experienced lawyer the legal issues present in the cases, as well as if I was going to go forward, how to best frame those.
Now, the Republicans also implied that Merrick Garland forced Jack Smith to speak to the Solicitor General about the DC case, but Smith rebutted that as well and informed Jim Jordan and his staffers that he alone made the choice to meet with the Solicitor General because he wanted to discuss Trump's First Amendment rights, his First Amendment defense that was inevitably going to come up. And we'll get to his testimony about the First Amendment later, but let's get back to debunking more of these Republican conspiracy theories. In this next clip, Jack Smith quickly dispenses with the right-wing theory that he conspired against Trump with state attorneys general. Let's listen.
Did your office coordinate with state officials?
What, you mean interview state officials?
No, coordinate, several other, state probes cropped up, in Arizona, in Fulton County, Georgia. And I'm wondering how you coordinated those efforts.
I know that we got inquiries from state authorities. I'm aware of that. My recollection is that we did not share any evidence with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think my recollection is we did not get any evidence from them. We got it from, that is my recollection, that it was all or largely from public sources.
Okay. Was there somebody on your team who had responsibility for liaisoning with the Attorney General for the state of Arizona, Chris Mays?
I don't believe so, but also the liaisoning, I don't think that, my recollection is that there was not like an ongoing discussion. What I was thinking of, I know we got a letter, for example, from the Attorney General in New Mexico asking for information from us. I don't have a specific recollection as well as to other states. It may well be that we got other inquiries.
So there was no proactive coordination?
No.
Okay, there was no proactive coordination, regular communications with Chris Mays' office in Arizona?
I don't recall any regular communications, but I'm hesitating just because I don't recall, as I sit here, how many times they might have reached out to us or that sort of thing.
Right. How about with the Fulton County DA's office with Fonnie Willis and Mr. Wade?
Yeah, I've never had contact with either of those people.
So no coordination. I never spoke with those people. Don't know what you're talking about. Shut it down. Next, more collusion and coordination conspiracy theories because they want to ask Jack Smith about his communications with the January 6th Select Committee. Now here, we learned something that I wasn't aware of. We learned that the committee actually waited until the very last minute. We knew they waited till the very last minute, but we didn't know that people went to actually get their information from them, from Jack Smith's team. That was another cause of delay in this case. It took months to get that information. But more importantly, Smith's answer shuts down the Republican theory that Democrats on the January 6th Select Committee deleted all their files to hide the truth. Because as Jack Smith testifies here, he actually handed over all of the January 6th Committee's work to Trump's team in discovery. So they had it. Watch.
What types of communications did you or your staff have with the January 6th Committee?
So when I was appointed as special counsel, I asked at some point whether we had gotten evidence from the special counsel, from the select committee. We had not. And so I directed my staff to get that evidence, get whatever evidence we could from them. And I think it was in December or so that we did, in fact, get evidence from them and get a copy of their final report. And this is the this is referenced in the